In this comparative study, I would be analyzing the aesthetic portrait of queer gender and how that social oppression affected across culture and geography, with the focus of queer theory in two films, which is Farewell My Concubine, a Chinese historical drama film directed by Chen Kaige in 1993, and The Portrait of a Lady on Fire, a French historical romantic drama film directed by Celine Sciamma in 2019. The word queer was first introduced as a label to insult homosexuals, but later, the term was meant to gather together multiple marginalized groups into a shared political struggle, as well as fleeing back at mainstream heterosexist culture as epithet that had been used to suppress people for decades, which became a sense of gay pride and the attitude of inclusivity as an umbrella term. Growing from several roots, including the second wave of feminism, the radical movement of people of color, and the activism in AIDS, it linked with a number of new areas of critical discourse that were concerned with gender, race, and ethnicity. However, different from feminism that looked more into readdress the balance of patriarchal traditions. Queer theory essentially challenged the premise of heterosexuality as normative and deconstructed the perception of a rigid dichotomy of male and female traits. Farewell My Concubine sets in a politically turbulent 20th century China as the first gay film, undergoing a change from the early days of the Republic to the Cultural Revolution. It chronicles an intimately entangled yet troubled relationship between two Peking opera actors, Chen Dieyi and Duan Xiaolou. As Dieyi grows up with Xiaolou, he blurs his gender with his onstage female character and develops an intimate dependence on Xiaolou. Portrait of a Lady on Fire sets in France in the late 18th century, taking place in the mid-Enlightenment era. It tells the story of a lesbian affair between a young aristocrat, Helios, and the painter Marianne, who was commissioned to paint her portrait for Helios' would-be suitor in secret. The reason for choosing these two films is due to the common themes explored in queer theory while created in different cultural contexts. I will focus on two facets of queer theory. First, queer theory illustrates gender and sexuality are socially constructed. As Judith Butler said, masculine and feminine roles are not biologically fixed but socially constructed. Social context significantly impacts gender identity for both the relationship between Marianne with Helios and Dieyi with Xiaolou. In Portrait of a Lady on Fire, during the French Revolution, marriage ensured that the husband was the dominant partner in the relationship. This suppression can be seen from the conversation.
Vous auriez préféré rester au couvent?
C'est une existence qui a ses avantages. Il y a une bibliothèque. Vous pouvez chanter, entendre de la musique.
Helios' reply shows how eager she wants to have freedom instead of restricted rules within the male-focused society. The film seems to create a pure female society with the absence of male roles, but the male power in the film has never been absent. For Helios, she is forced to be married without the chance of getting a word from her unknown husband. For Marianne, as a female artist, she ironically paints in his father's name and is unable to paint a nude portrait of a male. Both of them are trapped in a male-dominated and gender-unequal society. In Farewell My Concubine, Peking opera is the most well-known cross-gender art as women are limited to attend public performances. Thus, it becomes a male-dominated art which is referred to as nandan or male diva. In the old era, actors are stigmatized and played only for the pleasure of the ruling class. Dieyi as a concubine is expected to take on action and the mindset of a woman, which heavily shapes his gender into queer within the social environment instead of an innate process. When Dieyi is little, since his mother is a prostitute raped by his father, he has been raised as a girl. In the close-up shot of Dieyi's mom, the cold natural light comes from one side of her face, reflecting the black shadow, and showing the embarrassment and helplessness of Dieyi's mom as a prostitute in society. She is forced to abandon her son, even with the cost of cutting off Dieyi's sixth finger, which metaphors his spiritual castration. When Dieyi is molested by Zhang Gonggong, who is a castrated male in Qing dynasty of ancient China, who holds superior power and symbolizes the fearfulness of feudal dynasties. The low-angle shot with a distance view and kotan highlights the castle, which represents the traditional power, and Dieyi is particularly small, showing his inability to do anything about the molestation. Such a society is conservative and unjustified, different from the Western culture in which audiences find the existence of sexual and religious discourses. Chinese culture tends to suggest an anxiety for the absence of homosexuality. The juxtaposition between rape and homosexuality in Farewell My Concubine suggests that both Dieyi and her mom are violated by a culture that denies homosexuality and female sexuality in a silent language. Secondly, queer theory seeks to challenge traditional ideas of heterosexuality as normative. Both films portray characters in their design to express their gender and identity. In Farewell My Concubine, Die's traditional Peking opera female costume and heavily colorful makeup can be seen as the camp aesthetic to reject the heteronormativity. For Louise Tyson, camp is a way of confirming one's difference from heterosexual culture. It is a way of disarming heterosexism and healing oneself through lover, and thus it's a way of transforming victimhood into power. Die's feminine male image can be captured from his delicate gestures, body posture, high-pitched voice, and a jealous mentality. Thus, it is regarded as a homosexual alien called a sissy. This is a stigma that mainstream society imposes on gay men, but it can also be the resistance that gay men give back to the mainstream society. While in the Portrait of a Lady on Fire, it uses gaze as a way to challenge it. For French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said, gaze is the consciousness of being looked at. In the first act, Heloise refuses to pose for a painting and always keeps a distance from the camera. Such rebellious action indicates how she resists of being viewed by the aristocratic society and how painful she is of being aware of herself as an object. It's a battle of objectifying looks. As Michel Foucault said, there's no need for arms, physical violence, material constraints, just a gaze, an inspecting gaze, a gaze that each individual under its weight will end by to the point that they are their own overseers. Each individual thus exercising surveillance over and against themselves. When Heloise actively looks into the camera, it breaks the fourth wall. It's a subversion of challenging the audience to rethink their value. As the audience gazes at the object gazes back. When audiences observe the painting of Helios, the eyes often regarded as the window of the soul have been smudged out, which represents the visual rejection of the objectifying gaze. It makes the spectator and the model reverse their roles to infinity, illustrating the inequality of the dynamic power and deconstructing the male gaze. While subverting stereotype, queer theory in Portrait of a Lady on Fire also attempts to normalize queer relationship. This can be seen when Marianne is observing Heloise for painting. She understands the meaning of Heloise's looks, facial expressions, and inner emotion as being angry. In return, during the painting, Heloise also gazes back and feels Marianne's same underlying affection as being free. In fact, Marianne and Heloise are not gazing at each other. Instead, they are accepting, seeing each other's inside, and embracing their true love. It's a love that sees eyes to eyes. It's a pleasure in what they see. The exchange in shared gaze gives them the confidence to act on their mutual desire and identify themselves psychologically. However, standing in a different perspective of a gay and lesbian relationship, Farewell My Concubine is surrounded by brutal masculinity. Long shots are used to express the inner emotion of the characters and the ruthless repression in society. When Dieyi is forced to play a female character as indicated in the dialogue, the cruel beating and the torturous training in Dieyi's childhood attach to a trajectory of the female beating fantasy. The extreme close-up shot of the brutal revenge of his mouth with a brass pipe illustrates a powerful sexual awakening. Audiences can feel his struggle for resistance, his renunciation of gender identity, and his acceptance. Fire is a symbol of the attraction between the lover, demonstrating its beauty and destructiveness. In the scene where Marianne and Helios face each other with fire, it builds up a sense of desire, as fire embodies a strong passion. The love between Helios and Marianne is pure and touching, but is also heartbreaking at the same time because of the conservative pressure to ask women for being obsessive and obedient. In Farewell My Concubine, fire represents the blood, excitement, and violence. The close-up scene shows the crazy psychological of the characters at the moment and the helplessness of the character in the environment of cultural revolution. The theme of the mirror is significant, as it metaphors the character's inner desire and sexual identity. In the close-up shot, Dieyi and Xiaolou are doing makeup respectively facing to a mirror. In Chen Dieyi's mirror, Duan Xiaolou is reflected, foreshadowing his yearning for Xiaolou's love. One mirror is round as tenderness, while the other one is square as strength, which indicates Dieyi's feminine and Xiaolou's masculine as their gender roles. The harpsichord played by Marianne heightens her love for Heloise, as if the passion of music bonds them closely. It captures two women's longing for love and intimacy. In the last scene, the orchestral music as the diegetic sound is pivotal, as the medium close-up shot continuously zooms into Heloise's face in a long take. It seems like she can already feel Marianne and remember past memory of her with myth and love through the music, which makes audience unforgettable about the love story. Such power of music and memory of love and desire is full of strings. The low string and the percussion music of Peking opera such as Aohu has a strong sense of the time because of its distinct Chinese oldies. It is often accompanied by the mood of the character. When Dieyi is seized and criticized, the sound of the banging of big drums renders the intense atmosphere. When Dieyi is betrayed, the harsh music reflects his despair and resentment, and it reveals the cruel reality of the society, setting a sad atmosphere. Both queer characters are ultimately unable to change their own environment and life.